Welcome to this tutorial where I show you how to create a little miniature posable figure. This figure is about 3.5 inches tall, and this figure uses embroidery thread and self-adhesive bandaging material, which can be purchased latex-free if you have a sensitivity to latex, but most of it does contain latex, so that's something to keep in mind. You can get it in different colors, so you can, mix and match. I usually use the skin tone, or beige, I should say, and then I can, add paint after I'm done to, kind of play with the skin tone, whether it needs to be lightened or darkened. And I use acrylic paint for that. You can also paint the clothes on. These pants have been painted on. And then this little shirt actually uses some white self-adhesive bandage to create. And it's kind of fun because that way, you can create clothes for your sculpture without having to sew. These are so small that it's really not, I don't know what the word is, not rewarding enough to create separate fingers, but you can create a separate thumb so that it gives, the appearance of it being hands. This character uses air dry clay and embroidery thread for the hair, air dry clay for the face and head. This figure is the one that is going to be actually in the tutorial, and this figure is about 4.5 to 5 inches tall if he's standing straight. Yeah, he's about 5 inches tall. And his head uses polymer clay. It's also painted, but you can get polymer clay in different colors, so you wouldn't necessarily have to paint the major skin tone. You could just paint the details. His hair is also embroidery thread. He also uses paper for some of the accessories, and the pre-wrap, or not the, yeah, the pre-wrap for some of the clothes, which is this thin kind of translucent material that is also a first aid supply. And then the self-adhesive bandage is used for the majority of the clothing. The boots use pre-wrap, acrylic paint, and just leftover tissue paper that are glued together and then painted to create a material that has kind of a leathery look to it, and it also kind of feels like leather. For both of these figures you also use wire, and these are small enough that you can use jewelry wire. I usually get one that is thinner, and then one that is a little bit thicker. I usually get them in different colors also, so I can immediately recognize what gauge I'm working with without having to, compare the two. This character also uses different colors of the self-adhesive bandaging material, and some of it has also been painted. This is actually the white self-adhesive bandage that has been painted with a little bit of acrylic paint and then allowed to dry. So without further ado, we will get started on this small figure that is posable tutorial. Okay, so we'll take our wire cutters and we'll cut off a little chunk, and we're going to start at the neck. Okay, we want it to be about in half, and this, you want a little kind of loop for the neck and the head, and it's really easy to end up making the neck too short, so you want to extend that just a little bit. Okay, and then we're going to come out, and we're just making the torso first. Okay, we have that. Okay, so when you have the loop made, and remember that you want to make it a little bit longer than you might think you need to, because you want to have enough space there for the neck. And then you bend these out about where you're going to have the shoulders. And then we're going to slope the shoulders down just a touch. And then we're going to bend it like that. Okay, now the ends of these wires are pretty sharp, so it's a whole lot easier to use the pliers. Than it is to try to manage this. With your bare fingers. These little sharp ends I try to bend over as well as I can. Okay, so that's the first step. Okay. So you start out with a piece of wire about, let's say about 6 to 7 inches, and then you fold it in half, twist it to make this little head and neck, and then you slope it down for the shoulders, and then you make these little loops. The arms are actually going to attach here. And then bring the sides in. This is the sides of the rib cage. Just a little kind of a wasp type waist, and then another loop for the pelvis. If you make the pelvis too wide, the legs will be a little bit too far apart, so you don't want to make this too wide, but you also don't want to make it tiny. You know, it needs to be much wider than the head loop. Okay, our next step is to make the arms, and we're going to attach them to these little loops, and then they're going to extend a little bit below the hips. If you stand and look at where your hands lie when they're just straight down on the side, they end up about halfway down your thigh. So we're going to measure this, and we're going to leave a little bit of extra because you need something to attach it, but not a whole lot. So we want it to come down about that far and have a little bit of leeway up here. So that looks pretty good. I suggest cutting them both at the same time. That way you don't have one arm that is, you know, half an inch longer than the other one, because it's hard to measure it after you have it all twisted up and everything. Okay, so I have the two arms. Okay, so I have this, looks kind of like a little abstract fish loop, and then I'm just going to, whoops, I'm twisting it the wrong way, and then just twist it together to adhere it for the wrist. And then up here at the top, you're going to want to twist it once again. Let's see, I'm going to actually twist this a couple times. You don't want to leave a sharp end to your wire just kind of hanging out there though. To curl it back in. Okay, and so the shoulder moves more than just, it doesn't just bend the wire, but there's actually a little loop there. Okay, so once you have the two arms attached, and then you take the pelvis area and you just take your needle nose pliers and bend this so that you have, it's kind of like a kidney bean shape, two loops on either side, and then it goes up in the middle. And now we're going to do the legs. And the legs also have, we're going to, kind of include the feet loops and all of that in them. And we're also going to double it because let's see how long we want our legs. Okay, the legs are going to go up to about here, and then we have the foot. Okay, so these are just the legs with the feet loop. The pelvis is approximately the center of the body, so however tall this is, you want the legs to extend about that far down from the pelvis for realistic proportion. And we need just a little bit of leeway because we are looping it around this side. Let's see, we want it to be pretty much symmetrical. And then we're going to loop it through. And this is what I was saying, is that it doesn't really behave like string. Okay, so you want this wire to loop around in the back of the pelvis. Okay, and if it goes up, that's just fine, but you do want it symmetrical. So keep straightening out the wire. See, we're not symmetrical, so we need to push this side up just a little bit and pull this side down. There, that's pretty symmetrical. Go ahead and pull this down. Okay, so this is about 2 inches, and the head's going to actually go up a little bit farther, so it's a solid 2 inches, a little bit more. So we want this to come down from here 2 inches at least. If you want to make the legs a little bit longer so that it's more of a classical proportion or heroic proportion, you can do that. Okay, so I've bent this up so that there's a little bit of a foot. I'm going to loop this around. Okay, and then we're just going to leave that one as it is. We're going to do the same thing with the other side. I want to make sure that the legs are symmetrical. Oh, let's see, somehow I made these too short. And that's why you want to give yourself a little bit of extra, because otherwise you end up cutting a whole lot of extra wires to try to get it just right. Okay, so after you get the proportions the way that you want them, whether they're realistic or more heroic or whatever stylized proportions you might be wanting, you want to loop the end of the wire around that pelvis wire. Okay, so here is the little wire form after it's all finished. The arms were made separately, and they loop onto the little shoulder areas. The pelvis has this little kidney shape, and then you measure a wire that is a little bit more than twice the length that you need, including the feet. But you see how when you double up the thin wire, it actually makes it thicker and stronger. Now, if you end up with one arm or one leg too long, or both of them too long, you can always take the needle nose pliers and you create an S-bend at the elbow. Okay, so you go up a little bit more, and then you bend it like so, and then you hold it like this, and then you bend it like so. Okay, and that little crimp will shorten whatever limb you need shortened. Okay, and then you can kind of extend it to make it longer. Okay, and you can do that with the knees, you can do that with the elbows, and if you change your mind and want to straighten it out, just use the needle nose pliers and straighten it back out.